So now that you've picked your gun, I'm going to show you how to set it up to make it as simple and easy as possible. I want my gun, my one gun, if this is the one thing I'm going to own, to be as versatile as possible. So ideally, get a reel, get a buoy, and get a float line. That way you can cover almost the entire spectrum of what you need to do with this one gun. The gun should come rigged with the line attached to the front of the gun, and then that same line is going to be attached to your shaft. So when you shoot a fish, you pull the trigger, the line's going to come off, and you're going to be attached to the fish with the gun. If you're diving deeper or you don't have a good breath, that's not an ideal situation because the fish is going to pull the gun out of your hands. So what we do is we have two options for allowing ourselves to get to the surface. One, and the easiest that I suggest for everybody, is a float line. This is called a tuna clip, and there's actually already a tuna clip on the back of this gun. So what I would do here is I would just clip this tuna clip off to the back of this, and then depending on the depth that you're diving, you have different length float lines. If you're going to do a 50-foot dive, you need to have at least a 75-foot float line. That way you have a little bit of slack on the surface while you're going down, because the wind is going to have your buoy back behind you on the surface, and as you dive, you're going to have your line going up at like a 45-degree angle until the buoy is above you. So you need to have enough slack that you can get down without it pulling on you. This, again, this has already got a clip on there. You can just clip it to that, or you can clip it to that soft part of the buoy. And this buoy is going to stay on the surface. It's going to mark your location. It's going to allow you to let go of your gun completely and fight the fish from the surface. And also, it's really the #1 safety thing for boats, your boat, other boats, and everybody to be able to see you. So now that this is all attached, you're rigged up, you can go down and pull the trigger and let go of the gun. I personally suggest that you hold the line though and let the line kind of run through your hand, so the fish is not going in the hole, but you're also able to get to the surface. You don't want that fish to go in a hole, especially in current, and then have the chance of tearing off or holing up, sharks coming, and just compounding the situation. The sooner you can get the fish up, the better it is for the fish, for you, and for keeping the sharks away. So we're going to start from scratch here. I'm going to cut this line off, and I'm going to rig my line so that I can use both my reel and my float line for total breakaway on the float line. And I'm going to show you how to do that right here. Your tools that you're going to need are all in this Florida Freedivers pack. What do you guys call this? Your Florida Freedivers band tying kit. So it's perfect. Everything you need is in here with the exception of the mono. So this one's got 300 or 400 pound monofilament on it. You can also use Spectra or Dyneema. This is the Spectra in here, and I'll just get right into it here. So I have everything laid out here to rig up this Rob Allen. This is a 1200, which is a 120 centimeter gun, which is a great all-around versatile size that I suggest for everybody getting started. This is my little tiny bungee, which is it's just a rubber band to use for the breakaway and to attach the line to the gun. These are my 2 crimps for each end of the monofilament. Crimpers, little cutters, more extra crimps, my reel, monofilament, my shaft, and my gun. First thing I'm going to do is just put the gun on, or the reel on the gun. These reels are super easy to put on, and it's a really smart, simple design. All you do is put it on there and push it forward, and you're good to go. I am going to add a snap swivel to this to make it easier for attaching. So this is a pretty big snap swivel, but this will work fine. I'm just going to put it on there, a little bowline knot. And we're good to go. I've got my crimp, I've got my 400 pound mono. Just going to run that line through the crimp, then the line is going to go through the back of the shaft. And then I like to have it measured out about there so that it's far enough that it's not going to be inside of the trigger mechanism, jamming it, and it's far enough away from the notches that when I'm loading my bands, the wishbone's not going to hit here. So then you put this through there, and you can finish these off with a lighter. And the reasoning behind this is to just make a little bit of a mushroom there so that this won't pull back through the crimp. So the reason it pulled through the crimp there is it was still hot. So I'm going to do that again. And then I'm going to be patient and let it harden up. But I don't want any line hanging out of this because it's just one more thing to catch. All right. Now before you've tightened this crimp up, you want to make sure that that's in the exact place that it's going to end up. This line, you got to remember, when it's all said and done, is going to be flat against the shaft like that. So it's going to end up there. So that's where I want it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my crimpers, and the bigger the crimpers you have, the better the crimping job is going to be. In Florida Freedivers, where we are right now, they have a bench crimpers, but for the most part, you guys are just going to have these hand crimpers. And you're going to put it just like that over the end of the crimp so that you've got a little bit of the edge of the crimp out so that you're not pinching the line underneath. And you're squeezing it tight like that. And you can see it's a nice even crimping there. And if you've got a big crimpers, you'll only have to do this once. You won't have to keep shifting the crimpers. But that's a nice clean crimping job there. It didn't crush it too much, just the right amount to put pressure on the whole bit of the line that goes through there. Okay, so now that we have this, we're going to put our shaft back in our gun. When you load these shafts, this is another common mistake, is you need to put it under the bands like this. And you lay your shaft in there. Pulling out line as I go here to make sure I've got enough line to do what I need. And you grab your shaft in the front. There we go. So now she's locked in. You can feel she's locked in. You see where I measured it. The crimp is outside of the trigger mechanism, and we've got plenty of room between here and the tabs where it's going to go. All right. So now you would rig your gun. Normally to see how much line you're going to have and what you're going to need. And this is called the line release, which is just behind the reel and just forward of the trigger mechanism. I'm going to run the line down one side of the gun and under that line release. Then I'm going to run it up to the front part here, which they call the line rest. And then I'm going to run it back down again. The length here that I've chosen to make this line is what I would call a wrap and a half. So there's a full wrap here going from the front of the gun to the back, back to the front, and back again. That's all you're ever going to need. If you're shooting further than that, you're not going to get penetration, and you're probably going to lose a lot of fish. If you're shooting farther than that, your chances of landing a fish are significantly decreased. So be patient, wait for a better shot, and after you've pulled the trigger, that extra 10 feet of line that the fish would have there is going to give him 10 more feet of slack before you're able to get your hands on him, and he's probably going to get in the hole too. Okay, so now we have what we call the bitter end of the line. And you can go ahead and put your crimp on here and make your loop. And I'm going to use this gun for both blue water and for reef. So I'm going to have it rigged for the reel, which to rig it to the reel, I'm just going to have this clipped off to here. But I also want to have the option of not having the reel, being able to pull the trigger and keep the gun and have this attached straight to the float line. So if this is attached straight to the float line, how am I going to keep the line on the gun so this isn't just floating around? With the reel is going to keep this tight. But without that, we need something like a rubber band to keep it tight against the gun. So that's the right length right there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shorten this up a little bit and make this loop a little bit smaller. I'm going to burn this again to mushroom it real quickly. And in all of my many years of diving, I personally have never seen one of these slip through a crimp, whether it's mushroomed or not. This is just being very, very particularly detailed with rigging. So now that I've got the right length, I double check that that's exactly where I want it. I can adjust my rubber bands, and I'm going to crimp this again. So I know where the crimp is going to be. I'll pinch the mono there, so it's going to stay in that position. It won't keep slipping. And I'm going to do the same thing I did at the other end of it. I'll pick the right size crimp holes, which in this case is 1 to 2. Crimp once, twice, 3, 4. Okay? So now, if I'm rigged to the reel is attached right there. And what happens is, when you pull the trigger, line is going to run out off the reel. So you're still attached to your shaft and you can get to the surface. I keep my drag all the way loose and I just use my hand as the drag so that I can let line out, but also keep tension on to get to the surface. Okay, so say we're doing a drift in South Florida, we're shooting reef fish and we see wahoo and kingfish. I probably don't want to shoot a wahoo or a kingfish with my reel because I'm going to run out of reel line pretty quickly. So what I'll do is I'll rig my buoy. So when I rig my buoy, I'm going to take my float line, I'm going to clip it off to there, I'm going to unclip my reel, and you can just put your reel line back onto itself there. And keep it nice and tight out of the way. Tighten your drag so it's not going to go anywhere. Now you have the problem of, okay, where does this line go? What do I do? This is just a heavy duty rubber band. Just simple, easy, straightforward. And that's going to go to your line release right here. All right, so now what's going to happen, that line's going to be nice and tight up against your gun. It's going to keep everything nice and snug. When you pull the trigger this time, pull the trigger, shaft is out. You keep your brand new fantastic gun in your hands and your shaft is attached to the float line rigidly like this, and you can fight the fish from your buoy. Chances are, fish is going to run. By the time you get to the surface, the buoy is going to be right there in your hands and you're going to have a hold of it. And depending on what fish it is, then you fight it and bring it up to you. Pull, pull, pull. Pull it all the way to you. Don't try to touch the fish until he is right there at you. Pull him all the way to the surface. And what I tell people is to slide your hand down the shaft until you can touch the fish, and then you pull them all together like that and bear hug and get him in close to your body. So that's how you're going to rig your first gun. Again, come down to Florida Freedivers or one of the close dive shops to you to have them rig it. If not, you can go through this video and set everything up yourself. You can order these great little kits that have everything you need. Add monofilament, whatever else you need to them, and you can do this stuff at home and you'll be good to go. Thank you again for watching our video today. We're going to continue doing these videos for you guys and make it easier for you to spearfish safely and have fun and